Grand day, gems and jewels, gods and goddesses. Hello, welcome. I'm your host, Corinthia Peoples, and this is Power in My Pivot. Power in My Pivot is a live broadcast where we discuss how ordinary people, such as you and me, become extraordinary and in our own right, and through the power of pivoting, turning, and changing, moving our lives from the prescribed direction of mass societal roles and conditions. This is a show for men and women, kings and queens, dukes and duchesses, and just everyday people. The time has come for us to control our narrative and remember who we really are, and to set the stage to lead by example. On today's edition of Power in My Pivot, we will have a discussion with our guest, Mark Bolzern, and demystify the widely and wildly buzz of digital currency. We're going to talk digital currency, the craze of Bitcoin, and what is cryptocurrency? What is this? What is this new thing? So stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Power in My Pivot is a discussion where we unpack the details of our pivots, of our transformation, whether that's voluntary, involuntary, circumstantial, or just by sure survival. It's a talk of our soul's journey and the evolution of us being human. Welcome all to the room. This is an interparticipatory discussion and dialogue, so feel free to drop comments inside of the comment box. And please, at this time, if you would not mind, I would be so glad for you to smash on the like button and to subscribe to the Corinthia Peoples YouTube channel, right? So welcome to the room. Welcome. Today, our special guest, Mark Bolzern. Mark grew up in Anchorage, Alaska. He has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering at the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. He also has a master's degree in theology at Colorado Bible College. He is of the original pioneers of both the Internet and Linux computer operating system. His background is in business, building and team management in a computer informational systems environment. He has participated in influencing such technologies as Linux Standard Base, Linux International, Linux Professional Institute, and Alaska Computer Society, just to name a few. Mark owns over 30 different cryptos and continuously keeps track of the market. He has proven himself to be a technology forecaster many times over. Welcome to the room, our guest, Mark Bolzern.
Well, hello, Corinthia. Thanks for the great introduction. I'm impressed with myself.
You should be. You should be, as we all. You know, big feats and small feats, they all matter.
So they do.
Glad to have you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's a joy to be here.
Yes, I see the whites, the windows open behind you and just whiteness. So I guess that's the Alaskan snow back there, huh?
It is. It's the long lake and it's frozen over, and there's some trees on the other side of the lake, which I guess I can't see now.
Yeah, I guess it's snowing, huh? When you can't see it.
I think it has to do with the sun is just coming up here, and so the lighting is continuously changing.
That's right. That's right. So you guys are in your 24-hour light time.
No, actually, in Anchorage, it's never 24 hours dark or 24 hours light. That's further north. That's about 400 miles north of Fairbanks, if that's the case.
Oh,
And even when it is the case, it's only the case for about 2 months.
oh wow.
Here in Anchorage, our shortest day is sun up around 10:30, sundown around 3:30.
Wonderful. Wow. So sundown 10:30 p.m.
No, our shortest day is sun up about 10:30 a.m. and sundown about 3:30 p.m. And our longest day is sundown at about midnight and sun up at about 3:30 a.m.
Wonderful. Wow.
So it never actually gets dark on those days, but the sun is actually over the horizon.
Wow, that sounds like some interesting living, Mark, to say the least.
It is.
Some
And
good eating, some good fish eating.
yeah, salmon is definitely good eating. The Copper River Reds are especially good. Kenai Silvers, yeah, good food.
Good food. Wonderful. So Mark, so you came here into the space to talk to us about this digital craze, this new technology that's like worldwide, not just in America and the United States. This thing is like huge. Mark, help us to become comfortable with the term cryptocurrency. What is Bitcoin?
Well, the term cryptocurrency, the word crypto, the first part of it comes from cryptography. And I don't know if you remember the story about the German submarine that they stole the coding machine off of, and that's what allowed the Allies to win the Second World War, because the Germans were sending encrypted messages to their commanders and troops around the world, and as long as it was a secret, the Allies didn't know how to counter it. But once that code was broken from the code machine that they stole, they then were able to counter all the Germans' moves, and that turned the war. Well, cryptography is the basis of cryptocurrency, and that's why it's called cryptocurrency. There's a private key and a public key, and the public key is for public consumption. The private key belongs to the individual who owns the particular cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, for example. There's a slogan: your keys, your coin, not your keys, not your coin. And this is a war between centralized and decentralized. And centralized is kind of like power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, as we have seen throughout world history, one government after another has become corrupt. One capitalist organization after another has become corrupt. Anyone who would take control of an area would then try to increase their control and take the goods from those that they rule to, in turn, do battle and then take the goods from those that they conquer. And this has been an ongoing human saga that spirituality on this earth needs to change to where we take care of the things around us because those things take care of us too. And it needs to happen throughout all levels of society. And Bitcoin is the first, by design, truly honest money.
Interesting, because Bitcoin originally was considered the dark web type of funnel, if just as a metaphor, right? It was considered like criminalization, where crime was able to put money. Can you bring us through that piece? Oh no, that was the other thing, the Skid Row, right?
People, whenever a new technology comes into existence, people tend to ignore it and then they ridicule it, and then they fight against it, and then they adopt it, and then they claim to rule it. And that's the stages that Bitcoin has gone through, like any other technology. Personal computers went through that, smartphones went through that. Every new idea goes through that because people don't want to change. And organizations who have power don't want what their power is built on to change. So Bitcoin was first developed by Satoshi Nakamoto, a pseudonym for a person or a group. And we don't know who he is, and it doesn't matter, because in Bitcoin, we can trust the source code. We don't have to trust the person. Well, that's a mental shift for people. If we're going to trust Bitcoin, don't we need to know who the Satoshi Nakamoto is? No, you don't, because it's open source and anybody can study the source code. The source code tells how it will operate when the miners execute that source code, when the wallets execute that source code on behalf of you and exchanging your Bitcoin with somebody else. And the miners, the word miner is would actually be better understood as transaction processor. Okay. Originally, Bitcoin was done in analogy to gold mining, because as engineered as money becomes more valuable over time. And to do that, they used gold as an example. Well, to give gold its value, the fact that energy has to be used to get that gold out of the ground, well, that gives gold value, and it gives gold scarcity. Well, Bitcoin has scarcity because of the transaction processing, and initially 50 Bitcoins were given to the transaction processor that won the race for any particular block. Okay. We'll get to this when we get to blockchain later.
Oh my God. Because you're talking to novice, right? You're talking to, well, we have Cinnabar Jones. I see he's in the house. He's not a novice. But I am. And I don't know. I think most, I don't know. I really don't know. Bitcoin is pretty new, the concept. It's been around for what? How long? You got it in 2012, right?
Yeah, actually, it's the white paper came out in 2008. The code to use it came out in late 2008, 2009. There were a few miners participating, and that's where the reward for the miners winning the blocks became important. And that's how Bitcoin got into circulation. And then by 2011, I believe, the very first well-known transaction occurred with Bitcoin. And that's where a person who had been mining Bitcoin wanted to buy a real world something with it. So he wrote a post offering 10,000 Bitcoin for a pizza.
That's right.
And a fellow from Britain actually replied and ordered him 2 pizzas from Domino's in return for those 10,000, or maybe it's Papa John's, in return for those 10,000 Bitcoin. And so that was the first real world setting of value of Bitcoin. 10,000 for 2 pizzas, about $20. Now Bitcoin is, this morning I looked at it, was $40,000 per coin. So imagine how the person feels not having held onto those Bitcoin, having to exchange 10,000 of them for a $20 pizza.
Yeah, or it could have been like, it could have been a setup, also to kind of like inject the Bitcoin into the system, because you mentioned centralization and decentralization. You also mentioned change. And you also mentioned technology, and how every single piece of new technology that changes the trajectory of humans in the world is always there's always pushback against, right? So can you bring us help? Because I'm learning here. Bring in Bitcoin cryptocurrency Bitcoin into blockchain?
Well,
Are they
well,
married?
without blockchain, cryptocurrency is not possible because that's what dictates the honesty. Blockchain, every Bitcoin that ever gets mined appears on the blockchain, and every place it's ever been is there. And when it moves, the old one becomes invalid, but it's still recorded and available, the old record of where it was. And now who owns it? It's investigatable by anybody according to its public key. But the individual cannot move it, cannot exchange it without having the private key. So it's public private key encryption.
So the blockchain are connected to the keys and owning the piece of the Bitcoin that you own.
When you own Bitcoin, there's this term of wallet, having a Bitcoin wallet. That is a little bit of a fake term. I would actually prefer to use the term key ring.
Okay, like a key ring, like a regular key ring?
When I say wallet, think key ring.
Okay.
Because the wallet is where your private keys are stored. Okay. And that is the only place it will ever be. And there's a protocol between the Bitcoin miners and the wallets as to proving that you have the private key to the Bitcoin that's actually on the public ledger. Okay, the Bitcoin's not in your wallet. The private keys to manipulate it are in your wallet. But the Bitcoin itself is on the public ledger called the blockchain, and it is encrypted under a public key. And to move it and affect the Bitcoin in the private key, you need to prove, in the public key, you need to prove that you have the private key, and your wallet is a software that works with the miner to prove that, so that the miner then does your transaction.
Okay, this is interesting because, that could be confusing. However, I did understand what you said.
Let's simplify it. Let's simplify it. You own a car.
Okay.
The car is at the dealer right now.
Okay.
You hand the dealer one of your keys so he can drive it around the lot.
The test, yes.
He could have it stolen off the lot. One of his employees could take the key and take it for a joyride and wreck it.
Okay.
If someone were to get your private keys for your Bitcoin, they too can wreck your Bitcoin by taking it away from you. Okay. And then there's two places where keys can be. They can be at centralized exchanges, like if you purchase Bitcoin from Coinbase, for example, that's a big name. Coinbase holds your private keys on your behalf, and you tell Coinbase what to do with the Bitcoin. But that's no better than dollars, because Coinbase at that point is effectively the bank with holding your dollars.
Right.
And if the government wants to tell Coinbase that they want to take your dollars away, or if they decide you're not you and you got to prove you're you can't touch your Bitcoin because they've got control over it. Where if you have your own private wallet or analogy keyring, they can't stop you from doing whatever you want to do with it.
Okay, wait. I gotta back this up. Because I think we got really technical before we got into the philosophy of Bitcoin. So I just need to back us up a little bit here.
Okay.
So so this is good because Dawn Smith she's in the room, and wow. Okay, Dawn, we're gonna come back. Dawn, we're gonna table your question. We're gonna address it. I'm definitely gonna give it to Mark. It's a big one, Mark. So that's why I gotta go back. I gotta go back to the philosophy, right? So somehow we have come into fiat dollars, money, paper money.
Ah, the history of money. Yes, that's it. That's interesting. And if people don't understand the history of money, it's hard to understand Bitcoin.
See, so I think that's the piece that we need to just touch on, right? Because it definitely, we've morphed from this money, because Bitcoin is a monetary system.
Yes, it is.
It is a monetary system. It's a form of money.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
In fact, it's the most honest form of money that's ever existed.
But you have to understand money for somebody to get that, what you just said.
Right. So let me encapsulate the history of money real quick. Any item that is scarce and desirable is usable as money. People have used seashells, they've used feathers, they've used gems, they've used pretty much anything that's rare in a particular area will be desired by others that are around you, which means they'll exchange something they have for it, which lets you use it as money.
Mm-hmm.
And then for about 1,000 years, gold became the standard for money. Mm-hmm. And it was gold coins, where mm-hmm. the coin had the value that, you know, it was stamped by the Roman government, say, mm-hmm. and you knew that coin had that value, so you would exchange goods for it. And then
for that gold coin, we're talking about the gold standard. How
I'm talking about gold, specifically minted gold coins.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, as opposed to raw gold, where you have to figure out how pure it is, how much of it are you getting. That's a little more difficult, but it is still a real substance being exchanged for something. But they decided gold was too easy to steal and get away with. And so banks started holding gold on behalf of people and issuing paper certificates.
Right.
And had the value of the gold as long as somebody knew they could redeem it for the gold. Mm-hmm. And then silver got into play doing the same thing as gold. So there were silver dollars and gold dollars. But what gave that paper value was the fact that somebody could go redeem it for the gold or for the silver.
Right. So their paper dollar was backed by gold.
Yes. But in 1972, it was devalued before that, to where suddenly your dollar bought less gold than it bought before.
Wait, but just stay on the history of money. Just stay.
Yeah, I am.
1960s, what, 70?
So 72 was when it was taken off the gold standard completely. But before that, it was devalued once or twice, to where the dollars you're holding are actually worth less gold than they were, during Roosevelt's time. They fixed it to $20.
Okay.
$20 for an ounce of gold.
Okay. So then it was backed by the gold standard. The dollar bill, the $1, $5, $10, $20, $100 bill was backed by gold. Then it went off of the gold standard in 1972.
First, it became worth less gold. Some centralized authority decided your dollar bill was worth less gold than it had been before.
Okay.
And then in 1972, they abandoned the gold standard completely.
That's where okay. So no more is the dollar was no more at that point backed by gold.
So what they printed on the Federal Reserve note was backed by the full faith of the U.S. government. I don't know how much faith you have in the U.S. government, but I don't have much faith in the U.S. government.
Okay, hold on. Pause right there. So we went from the dollar being backed by the gold to it moving forward to the dollar being backed by the faith in the government to issue dollars as
fiat.
A capitalistic way, like you could earn them, you could trade them.
The word fiat means it shall be. And so the government basically prints this paper and prevents forgery, so more dollars don't appear, because if more dollars appear, it become worth less, right? So For a while, they were very anti-forgery, and now they're forging them with the official printing presses as fast as they can go. So the dollar, in effect, is designed to go down in value over time.
Okay, so this is the evolution of fiat money. That's where we're at right now. So from it going from gold, from being backed by gold, to being entrusted, to our government. Now we're at the point where it can be printed. There are printing presses that print money by our government, and this is why, correct me if I'm wrong, this is why we're able to get, the government is able to issue these stimulus checks.
Yeah, the government does not spend your tax dollars on doing things for you. It spends its tax dollars on the interest that it owes to the Federal Reserve for the dollars the Federal Reserve has loaned to the US government. The Federal Reserve prints the dollars out of thin air and then buys US bonds with those dollars, at which point the dollars end up in the government's hands and the government spends those dollars. But your taxes are used only to pay that interest, and it's not even sufficient to pay the interest.
Got it. Okay, so then I know it's not Q&A time, but I want to bring this in here because I this is a show where it is interparticipatory, so people can put comments. So I'm going to put up Don Smith's comment here because it's a question within it, and I think it's relevant to the conversation and as we move through the conversation. So as she says, okay, I get that we make our own money, so Bitcoin is made up like the US dollar, she says. It is a matter of trade for service/value. What is Bitcoin backed by?
Bitcoin is backed by the consumption of energy. There is something called proof of work. And when the miners do their transaction processing, there's a number of transactions that fit into a block. Let me back up and describe the blockchain real quick.
Yeah, because now
if you imagine having a checkbook, okay, old style checkbook. Those of you who are old enough will remember the checkbook, and you have money in the bank. And so you write out a check, but before you can write out a check, you've got to write the balance in your bank in the checkbook. And then you write a check for less than that value. And then you write out the amount of the check you wrote and you subtract it from how much was there before, and you have a running balance of that includes both your deposits and your checks, right? That's how Bitcoin functions. The blockchain functions with a running balance. Every Bitcoin, from the time it comes into existence, and it comes into existence as a reward to a miner for processing a page from your checkbook. The checkbook the transaction is one line. The page is a block, and the binding makes it a chain of blocks.
Just like you got multiple checks.
Yeah, you have multiple checks, but I'm using the ledger. The ledger book is the blockchain. The checks represent the transactions between you and people. That's what goes in and out of your wallet, in effect. But the blockchain is like the ledger book, where you've got to keep your balance. And every check is a transaction. A page of transactions is a block. And the binding of all the pages makes it a chain of blocks. In other words, blockchain.
Got it.
Okay. And so the blockchain is like a huge shared checkbook between everyone in the world.
Okay.
And once a transaction is in a block and it's on the blockchain, it is unchangeable. And every miner in the world, of which there are thousands of them, have a copy of the blockchain. And if any miner tries to cheat, the network has code to kick them off the network. So they don't cheat because they make too much money being on the network.
Okay.
So the majority will be honest. So what happens is when there's a page full of checks written, the miners, those go in something called the mempool. Okay, the mempool is the checks that have been written. The person who receives the check doesn't know it's real until it has passed through 6 verifications. The very first verification is when a miner chooses the transaction from the mempool to add to a block.
Right. So let me say this. We're getting technical here. I know it's hard to talk about Bitcoin without being technical. I really understand that. I'm going to back you up a little bit, Mark. And
I cannot prove it's trustworthy without you understanding the technical issues. That's why people take longer to adopt ideas, because they don't want to understand the technical issues. So they wait till enough other people have faith that they can trust because other people trust.
You're right. And I think that speaks more to human nature.
I agree.
So I think it's going to be up to the individual mind.
Yes, but they pay a price for waiting.
So that brings me to my next question. Why would society want a decentralized system of currency, of a monetary exchange? Why would the person that don't want to hear the technical piece of a Bitcoin or a blockchain why do you think, why would society want to shift from centralized to decentralized? What are some of the benefits of that?
First of all, centralized means the power is centralized in some human being or human beings, plural. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That cliche exists for a reason. It has proven itself over and over again, and it's been the bane of human history. Those in power will take advantage of those they're in power over. It's only a matter of time.
Okay, but we're talking about mindset, right? We're talking about the world knowing. We know about a dollar bill. We know about going to work, making it, or hustling to get it, or figuring out something to get money, $1. But we don't know about the crypto. Most
people don't even understand about after all that hustle for the dollar. In 6 months, it's worth less. They think the prices at the grocery store are going down, but the prices are going up. But no, it's not the prices going up. It's the dollar going down. Because when every item in the grocery store, the package gets smaller for the same price, or the price gets larger and the package gets smaller. That's when everything has one thing in common. That's the thing that's changing. That's how you do detective work. Right?
So then how relate? So you're talking about inflation.
Inflation is...
No, sorry. That's the devaluing of the dollar.
Yeah, that's inflation.
The dollar is going down. Everything.
And what the people that are in power are trying to get you to look at is the price is going up, instead of thinking
that the dollar is going
down. The dollar is what all this has in common. It's not the prices going up, because they're relative to one another. They're the same. It's the dollar going down. So why would you want to hold something that has less and less value over time? Bitcoin is designed to increase in value over time.
Okay, so there we go. That's the conjunction right there. You're saying that the dollar is devaluing. So why keep holding on to the dollar when the Bitcoin, the crypto, the blockchain is on the rise? That's the next wave of technology.
Yes, and the reason it's on the rise is because it's designed that way. And people who can't trust that it's designed that way will wait longer before they get on, but eventually they will get on too.
Because do you think everyone will be at some point forced to get on?
Yes.
Like meaning that it will be an adoption of, and not just America. We're talking about
the next. World. Yeah, the next thing that's going to happen is the central banks in self-defense are going to create central bank currencies that they're going to conflate with cryptocurrencies, but they're still going to be fiat currencies that they can print unlimited amounts of. So they will still be designed to go down, where the decentralized currency, which no one has control of, is designed from the outset to go up.
Okay.
And Don Smith just said the dollar goes up and down, as has Bitcoin. What goes up and down is based on what is your point of reference. If Bitcoin,
meaning Bitcoin is going up and down. She's right. Bitcoin is at 40.
It is if your point of reference is the dollar. If you think the dollar is steady, then the euro goes up and down, the peso goes up and down, the yen goes up and down. If you consider the yen is stable, then the dollar goes up and down. If you consider Bitcoin is stable, the fiat currencies go up and down. The volatility depends on what you use as a reference. Now, since the world does use the dollar as a reference, I'll grant you that the short-term volatility of Bitcoin does look up and down. But if you do an average of all Bitcoin prices over time, and you do a curve, you will see a fairly steady move upwards against all the other currencies. So if you use a time frame of 3 to 4 years, then Bitcoin has, no matter, even if you bought it at its very peak, by the time you wait 3 or 4 years, it has exceeded that peak. So it has gone up, and the volatility, that's simply useful for being able to get it on the cheap if you happen to see it low.
Oh, so you're looking, see, that's a whole nother mindset right there. Gem drop, you're looking at it as being the volatility meaning the up and down curves of this Bitcoin. You're looking at it as an opportunity to buy it, not as a risk.
Correct, because over time, it does go steadily upwards. There has never been a time, from the very beginning of Bitcoin, there has never been a time where you couldn't buy Bitcoin at its peak, and if you waited 4 years, that it wouldn't be higher than it was when you bought it at its peak. You only lose if you sell it during the down in between.
Let me tell you, this whole conversation, I hope, see, the point of having this conversation is to bring awareness and bring value. Because this is a whole thing, it's a whole new way of thought. Even being in quarantine, we're in a whole new way of thought, of being, of understanding, of expanding. Because there's something on the other side of this quarantine COVID. It's something on the other side. I'm convinced of it. There's something on the other side. And we keep talking about currency. Everybody's talking about currency. And it depends on what news you tap into. Because CNN is not talking about the real deal of currency. Fox News isn't bringing you the real deal about currency. So that's why it's time for us to create our own narrative, which brings me into my next question for you. I want to go into more of like your personal journey, but let me see if there's a question really quick. Yes. Oh my God. She says, so you see what Dawn says? She says, oh my God, isn't that with everything? Buy low, sell high. But this is the thing. What you're saying this is not a short-term thing.
Correct. It's a long-term store of value.
This is
in the short term, the price may go below where you paid, but there has never been a period of over 4 years where the price hasn't ended up higher than its prior high, and then the low never went below the prior high.
This is interesting. Okay, so Fanta, hi Fanta, welcome to the room. Fanta is a beloved elder in the community. So is Cinnabar. There's some really good people in the stream right now. Fanta, I'm talking to Mark Bolzern, and Mark is he studied crypto. He's in the space of computer technology, information. He adapted crypto ever since 2010, but started to accumulate in 2012. So we're talking about Bitcoin cryptocurrencies.
Right, and it took me 2 years to convince myself that this was for real. Okay, I didn't just adopt it because I had seen attempted currencies on the net, on the web, come and go. And I believed that the double spend problem, as it's called, in other words, you can copy a file, therefore you can copy a Bitcoin, or you can copy, no, you cannot copy a Bitcoin. The innovation of Bitcoin was to use cryptography in such a way that the unique value could be preserved in a digital asset. Digital assets become unique from one another. You cannot copy it and have it in two places at once because that would destroy its value. And each time I saw a attempt at digital money, like eGold was a good one because they actually held the gold, but then the US government took them down because they were creating a dollar competitor. But the reason the US government has not been able to take Bitcoin down is because Bitcoin is distributed. There is no entity to go after.
Okay, so there's almost like an upside and a downside to what you just said, to like decentralization, basically. That's basically what you just spoke to. You just spoke to like Bitcoin being the people's money.
It is
not regulated by a governmental entity worldwide. Because no matter, so the thing about Bitcoin is, you know how the yen is worth a certain dollar and the peso is worth another, and you know, the US dollar, but Bitcoin is the same no matter where you are in the world. So that's one piece. The other piece is that, I forgot my train of thought. So with that, I'm going to bring in, so you were talking about adopting Bitcoin, and you said it took you 2 years to convince yourself that there was going to be a shift.
And being a technology person, I had to dig into the source code. I had to read the white paper and wrap my head around what was being shared. Then I wanted to see the proof that the source code actually worked. And it took me 2 years to go from, hey, this is yet another attempt of money on the web that's going to fail, to, hey, wait a minute, this is for real.
What made you know that it was for real? By your reading the white paper?
Reading the white paper and then studying the source code and seeing that it was actually working the way it was supposed to work.
The way they said that it was supposed
to work. And I had to dig into bits and bytes detail that nobody wants to hear me talk about on this show.
Yeah.
But I ended up convincing myself that what they said about it was truth. And that's another thing about decentralized. Decentralized tends to be good for truth.
Wow.
And the Bitcoin network depends on the fact that 90% of the people involved are honest. And people on the whole are honest until they see an advantage in being dishonest. And Bitcoin is designed to incentivize honesty.
So do you think, interesting. So what you're saying is that Bitcoin was created to create a more honest, transparent society.
Yes, it's actually spiritual. Bitcoin.
That was my next question, and I'm going to get to Fanta. Hang on, I'm going to ask Mark your question, because you said that, and I want to say this. You referred to blockchain as a spiritual revolution in addition to a financial technology revolution. Enlighten us. How is it?
In this world, people who would deceive others have always been at an advantage, because those whom they would deceive, their minds don't work that deceitfully, and they could not see the deceit coming until after they got stabbed in the back. And so those who would deceive tend to be those who end up in power, those who end up rich, while the honorable and the honest and the sharing and so forth usually end up being the downtrodden, because they end up being deceived by the deceivers until the deceiver deceives enough of them that they get put down, and then another deceiver rises. Bitcoin ends up incentivizing honor and honesty, and it exists based on over 50% of the participants are honest. Because if someone's dishonest, they get kicked out of the network at the level of how Bitcoin is managed. The Bitcoin that's been stolen, the Bitcoin that's been used in crime, the Bitcoin that's been tainted, so to speak, is a very, very small minority. Any criminal that would use Bitcoin for crime is stupid, because it can be tracked that they owned that Bitcoin. And if they get caught for the crime and their computer gets stolen, the case is laid out for the court. They're going down. Because the entire blockchain history is there to reveal them. So that whole thing about Bitcoin being used for crime, well, in the very early days, Bitcoin was used for anything. And yes, there were people that bought drugs with it. Well, that got branded as crime. And Silk Road ended up becoming a dark web marketplace. And then that became the entity that got taken to task, and a martyr was made of the founder of it. And then the word was Bitcoin is for crime, Bitcoin is for crime, criminals use Bitcoin.
Yeah, that was what.
That's because it was too good. They needed people to not use Bitcoin. So they promoted the negativity about it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that Bitcoin is a threat to the fiat currency and the centralization of banking systems.
Totally. It's a threat to the existence of governments.
Because people can buy into this blockchain.
If governments can't pump their fiat down your throat, they can't reduce your value, therefore invisibly taxing you, and therefore pay their bills. If they have to deal with honest money, they have to pull back their horns and restrict themselves as to what they do as governments. Governments don't want to do that. Government's the entity that keeps growing.
Wow. So right now, we're living in the world right now where people are becoming millionaires overnight. The stock market is at its highest. All sorts of things. Bitcoin is
actually is the stock market at its highest, or is it all the dollars that have been pumped in and how much less the dollar is worth?
Okay, that's another way of looking at it. Well, there are people that are coming up with these dollars. That's a lot of them. And people are saying that this is the greatest transference of wealth right now. That right now we're living in an age where people, regular people, like me and us, can actually get in on this. This is kind of like when computers,
for regular people to get in on it is a feature of decentralized, as opposed to centralized, where they only let their buddies have it.
Right, the good old boys club. Yeah. Okay, so Fanta has a question. I'm just gonna take this right in. I'm just gonna give it. So Fanta's question is, let me put it on screen. Fanta's question is, can Mr. Bolzern suggest resource references for the layperson? Where can she study more about Bitcoin?
That was the first of the two links that I sent you, the http://wdlabcc.org.
Okay. All right. So could we put that in the chat? Are you able to put it in the chat, Mark?
I am not seeing a place. I have access to the private chat.
There we go. It's up. It's up. So we have the Pick My Brain one here.
That is my profile. That is not the. That is if they want me directly.
Got it.
If they want resources, I have created a page which has starting resources on it, and it's http://
Got it.
And I sent it to you in email. I don't actually have a place where I can type. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
okay.
that is a good starting point.
That's a good starting point. Wow, this whole Bitcoin thing is blowing my mind. It's so mind blowing because even right now, people can get in on Bitcoin, even in a short term fashion, right? I know it's long term; it's for the long haul, but
yeah.
But people, realistically, you have to know the stock market to get in on Bitcoin and make some money and help you pay, especially in a time where jobs are being no longer, people are being fired, people are losing their jobs. We're going into a serious situation. Can you see how Bitcoin can affect where we are as a people and if we are struggling?
I would tend to caution people with the use Bitcoin to make money attitude.
Okay.
Use Bitcoin to store value. Use Bitcoin for the value that you store going up in value. But if you're using it to make money, it implies that you're going to put money in and then take it right back out, being more than you put in. Well, that ends up getting people into the trading attitude of trying to buy low and sell high, and then banking on their emotions and doing the opposite, buying high and selling low.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you do that, if you buy high, resist selling low, wait till it's higher. But the only guaranteed time frame I can give you for Bitcoin is 3 to 4 years. So it's not an instant make money. But anyone who has bought some amount of money, some amount of Bitcoin, and has waited 3 to 4 years has found it going 10 times their value.
Wow.
Okay.
So right now, Mark, the highest it has gone is 40K that I've seen it. I personally learned about it in 2017, and I was like, "What is this?" Da, 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 da. But I did look at it, right? So now I'm like, 40K is the highest I've seen it. It's the highest. Do you speculate it going up? And Zeke has long car. Okay. And there's another question too. Do you what do you forecast Bitcoin going to this year? Just 2021. Are you reading Zeke's comment?
I'm reading Zeke's message.
Oh, here, I can put it on. I'll let everybody read it. As far as crime goes. Mm-hmm.
Well, anybody who integrates Bitcoin into criminal activity is a fool, because it's only a matter of time before they're revealed and the proof is available to take them to court and take them down. Money laundering, the biggest money launderers are JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, the banks, and they actually have a license to do that. And if they get caught, they get slapped with a fee that's less than they may do it laundering the money. So they're encouraged to continue doing it. Bitcoin, on the other hand, if it gets used for that and somebody is discovered doing it, they're done. They're taken out. So no, money laundering is not simplified in a decentralized network. It's simplified in the dark, which fiat currencies and banking systems specifically supports. And And no, the bigger a network it becomes, the more decentralized it becomes. So that question is ill-informed. It's the opposite.
So it says also about the popularity of it. Would it too become too big for a network to remain decentralized?
No, it becomes more and more centralized as the network grows. And then the biggest thing for Bitcoin is that it's harder to adopt. But when people that already have bought into the network get the greatest advantage for it, what separates that from, and it kind of ends there. Early adopters are going to get more advantage, but the early adopters aren't today's big fiat players, which means we have a turnover of the power brokers. We don't have these generational wealth people who've been controlling the world remaining with their high values as cryptos take over. We have new blood in charge. We're actually able to create a new world government that is decentralized, where areas take care of what needs to be taken care of in that area.
Good question.
And people who have the money end up being all over the world, but they're not the old money players.
Okay. I want you to address Fanta's question, because that's a great question, Fanta. Governments provide goods and services in a theoretically equatable way. If the use of Bitcoin will potentially do away with centralized government, how will the most vulnerable amongst us get their basic needs met? Guaranteed.
Well, first of all, government doesn't guarantee you anything. And as theoretically equitable as it may be, there's a lot of people that end up losing out, while a lot of people take advantage of the system. So I don't see how the current system is any example of good.
Interesting.
And as far as Bitcoin, you come up with a service, you come up with something that you can do. What is your dream? What is it that people will pay you for? And ask for payment in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then your money's as good as anybody else's.
Huh. Wow. Okay, this has been good. This has been super good. Mark, we're going to bring you back on at some point and talk more about this. We're at an hour in the show, so it's time for us to wrap up. But I want to ask you, I'm going to throw out 5 words, and I want you to tell us what comes to mind. Okay?
Okay, I don't do this well, but sure.
Nerd.
Friend.
Friend?
Mm-hmm.
Homeless.
Homeless. Migrant.
Wallets.
Ownership.
Misunderstanding.
Communication.
Unification.
Wonderful.
Awesome. So we put in the chat where people can find you, Mark. If I'm going to throw it back up there really quickly. And Zeke, if you can throw up the other one, I have the other piece here. Yes. Yes. Oh, wait, I got to get this one up here. Wait, hold on. With blockchain, we have more transparency in government. This is what Mr. Jones has, and you would concur.
I not only concur, I would add to it that we actually need less government with transparency.
That's a good note to end on. Mark, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you being here and sharing with us. We're going to bring you back on at definitely some point. We have your links up for people to, if they want to get in touch with you directly, or if they want to go on your resource that you've provided. Can you hang out backstage before
Certainly.
you go? And I would love to say bye to you. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. How interesting. I am so stimulated. I love intellectual conversations. I love learning something new. Especially, I love to learn something about how I can make a better life for myself. Bitcoin seems to be full speed ahead, baby. We are in and we are on to something new on the horizon. This whole blockchain technology and the things that it's going to be able to bring to us, that it's going to be a different way of living, existing, and being in this world is real. It is real. That's why I had Mark to come on, because I wanted to ask him questions. I wanted him to give his feedback and wanted to share it with all of you. The help tip, we don't only speak about the problem, we also render a solution. And the problem in this piece is the help tip for the week, basically, is research. If you're having an inclination of any sort, whether it be anything that can better support you in your life, research it. That's the help tip for this time, for today, for this week, for this show. Research your inclinations, go on them. It was placed in you for a reason. Do not pass by what you're getting an inclination for. I feel that is God's way. That is the Holy Spirit, the angels, the heavens, the universe, whatever you want to call it. That's that thing speaking to us. So do your research. That is the help tip for the day. What inspired me to do this edition of Power in My Pivot, I just said it. We got a new horizon. There's something new on the other side of COVID-19, and let's be a part of that piece. All right. So Power in My Pivot is a live broadcast that happens every single Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 Central, and 2 Eastern. Kings and queens, let's pivot from basic to bona fide, and always remember that nobody is better than you and you're no better than nobody. Spoken to me by a wise man, my grandfather. In the meantime, baby, there is power in your pivot. Until next week.